welcome to today's episode of Kandid Kaiya. Today I am here with a familiar face, my dear friend Melina, who is now a doctor. Some of you may remember her from the How to Become a Doctor video. Well, today we are going to be talking about how to get into your top choice for residency programs. Stay tuned. So hello, Melina.
Hey.
Thank you so much for coming on today's episode. Let the viewers know a little bit about yourself.
Okay. So as you said, my name is Melina Zuniga. I'm originally from California.
Dr. Melina Zuniga. Get it right.
Yeah, right. I'm originally from California. I moved to Atlanta when I went to undergrad at Spelman, and then for medical school I went to Morehouse School of Medicine, which is right across the street from Spelman, so I stayed in the same little area. I recently just graduated from Morehouse School of Medicine and moved to New Orleans, Louisiana, for Tulane University's internal medicine and psychiatry combined residency program.
Awesome. Okay, Melina, so just tell us a little bit about what the typical process is like to becoming a doctor.
Okay. So there's a couple of different ways people approach becoming a doctor. Some people do the traditional path, which you might think of as going to college after high school and then going to medical school right after. In college, people can major in a variety of things like biology if you're interested in the sciences, but don't think that you have to do that. There's a bunch of other options. Just make sure you get your science credits in. And then you can also do the kind of more less traditional path that a lot of people are taking nowadays, which is after college they take some time off to either explore other interests or complete credits that they didn't get done originally, or even just to pursue other careers like ENT or something completely unrelated to medicine. And then they come back to medical school after that. And once you finish medical school, you go to residency and you're a doctor.
Boom. So now let's get into more about the residency process.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in med school. The day you wait for is match day.
Yes.
Can you tell everyone what that is?
So medical school, for some reason, just determines residency positions in a way that's kind of similar to the NFL draft. So what we do, match day occurs in March of your fourth year, and what it is you find out, after all those places that you interviewed with, you find out where of those places you're going to go. So prior to that, you're going to go ahead and go on a whole bunch of interviews, and then you rank the programs, and the programs also rank you. And there's a computer program that matches you guys up, and wherever that is where you match. And that's what we celebrate on match day. And schools do it differently, but in general, it's a pretty big celebration, and we're all very happy to find out where we're going.
All right, perfect. So what is the match journey like? I mean, when do you start applying? How long does it take?
So you technically apply for ERAS is what the program's called in your fourth year, but you start planning on where you want to match in the very beginning of medical school. So it's important that you stay aware of your grades. They are important, and they do play a role in the match process, and it also kind of plays a role in where you're going to get interviews. So that's why it's important to begin the match process at the very beginning, but it technically starts fourth year when you start you submit your application, your personal statement, your CV, and then you start your interviews in fourth year.
Okay. Tell us, what criteria did you consider when choosing a residency program to apply for?
Right. So as I mentioned before, I'm in a combined medicine and psychiatry program. So there aren't very many of those in the country, so that was the program kind of directs what some of your criteria are going to be. So location couldn't be a huge limiting factor for me because there aren't that many in the country. So I had to be open-minded with location. But for other programs like medicine, psychiatry, family, surgery, OBGYN, those things are going to be all over the country. So the way some people approach the match process is by kind of narrowing where they want interviews based on location. It's important to know if you're kind of more research-oriented or not, because some schools are going to be a lot more research-oriented than others. Mm-hmm. I was a little bit more interested in policy than research, so I kind of asked quite a few questions about that on my interview trail. Other things that might kind of limit your decision-making is having family in an area, because residency is a very difficult time, so for me it's important to have good support. And kind of good weather. I've been in Atlanta. I really appreciated the overall mild temperature, so I try to stay in a hot area. So for me, it was a very big program, followed by location, followed by family. Is kind of how I did it. Okay. And then, of course, the criteria is amongst the schools. There's a few other things that you might want to consider, such as work-life balance within the residency program. It's kind of hard to feel out on the interviews trail, but you can, just by kind of getting to know how the residents are feeling. I would also say Those are the big ones, I think I would say. But other things kind of pop up, and it's a very personal decision for people. But those are the big things. They mostly all pay the same. So that's not a big factor.
Okay, so after you've chosen some schools to apply to, of course you apply. So I know you just mentioned some things that are needed for applications, but can you tell us more about the application process?
Yeah, definitely. So we use, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we use this,
ERAS.
Yes, we use something called ERAS, which is an online thing. It's very similar to the college application where you send it to everybody, and they'll ask you for more information if necessary or not. Some programs require like supplemental stuff, even on the first round. And then the first round is going to include like your CV, a personal statement, which should be directed towards the specialty that you're going into. And some people apply to multiple, that's why I say that, because you might have to write 2 personal statements. And then just the general like hobbies, things in the past. I think it's pretty important. You don't want to put all your information in there, like all the hobbies you've ever had, because you want stuff to talk about in the interview. And they like to find out stuff about you on the interview that wasn't in your application. And then, of course, your letters of recommendation, which are important. You need to go ahead and start, when you get into medical school, just go ahead and start trying to get a mentor and an advisor. Don't force it, but find someone that you click with and kind of has helped guide you throughout the whole process who can write you a strong letter of recommendation. Because on my interviews, 2 of the things that I was frequently asked about was how good my letter of recommendations were and my personal statement.
Okay. So Melina, can you kind of describe what the interview process is like and how many interviews did you go on?
Okay. I went on about 16, 17 interviews. The interview process, that's about average, I would say.
That's pretty draining.
It's actually a very draining process. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because it's really hard to schedule them because you don't know when they're going to come and when they're going to say they're open. So I ended up having like all of them within like a 3-week, most of them I would say like 10 in like 3 weeks, and then just a few scattered after that. So those like 3 weeks were exhausting. But in general, how they work is that you're going to fly or drive to wherever you're going. They almost always have a dinner the night before where you go and you socialize with the residents. And that's when you kind of get a good feeling of that work-life balance I mentioned a little earlier, because if they're like exhausted at the dinner and only talking about work hours and things that are making them miserable, you kind of understand that maybe the program's probably still a good program. It's just maybe they don't get the amount of rest that maybe they ideally would want. Which it's residency, don't expect a lot of rest, but just to keep that in mind. That's normally the first thing. If you can't make it, programs are generally understandable, but try to make them. It's a good picture of the program. Some programs do actually think it's important to come, so just feel that out when you're interviewing, based on the emails that they send, scheduling those. Next, it'll be normally a day of interviews. Like that morning you wake up and you just kind of get started. You get a little program orientation. You'll meet with multiple different program leaders, such as like the director of the program, maybe some associate directors. And you normally get an interview with a resident or 2, like one of the chief residents. And that also, you kind of, I like to do a lot of prep before I go into interview, because I don't want them to tell me anything there that I don't know about their program. You should be pretty well versed so you can have questions when you go into your interview. Of course, you're going to learn new things there, but try to at least know their website is what I would say for prep for the interview. And it normally ends with like a social event. Some end with a social event or a dinner, or you just go home after. But in general, it's a fun process. You meet a lot of really awesome people, but it is exhausting. What is, I think, the most important thing to remember when you're going into an interview is that you're interviewing them just like they're interviewing you. These people want to know if you can be someone that they can talk to on a 28-hour shift. They don't just want to know, oh, is she smart? Oh, is he a hard worker? They need to know the full picture. So just keep those things in mind when you're interviewing.
Right. Okay. So you mentioned you went on about 16 to 17 interviews, which I can imagine can get pretty pricey. So are there any funding opportunities available to help with the travel expenses and things such as that?
Right. Well, there are a few. There's been a few different methods that people have recommended for kind of funding this process because it can get expensive. I went to California a bunch from Atlanta. That's not a cheap trip. And then you have to pay for the hotels when you're out of town. I highly recommend couch surfing if you can. If you have friends in the city, stay with them. I did that multiple times. But for funding, some people say take out a little bit more money at the end of your 3rd year, that 2nd semester, or overall in your 3rd year, so you can have money going into 4th year to kind of help start with the funding. If that's possible, that's a great option. I think some people still need a little bit more money than that, and there is the Sallie Mae residency application loan that is specifically for fourth-year students who are applying to residency as well as trying to relocate to where the residency is located. It is a more high-interest loan, so if you can do taking out a little bit more third year or just trying to minimize how much you take out with the Sallie Mae loan, I think it goes up to about $20,000. That's a good option, but just of course keep in mind the interest rate. That's one of the loans, like if you have an option to try to pay off first, if you do end up taking that one. But that's kind of what I did, and it helped a great deal.
Okay. All right. So you've applied, you've interviewed. Now it's time to get matched, right?
Well, there's one more step.
Oh, okay. One more.
Unfortunately. The last step after you interview is your rank list. You have to make your rank list. And that's where you look at all the programs that you were able to get an interview at and that you did interview at. Don't rank programs that you didn't do an interview at. Don't do that. It's a waste of space. But, and you just place them in rank order. As I mentioned, it's kind of like the NFL draft. You rank some programs and they rank their people and they match it up. Is how it works. So just some things to keep in mind: where you want to live, like the cost of living in those cities, how you felt about the residents and their work-life balance. Did you feel like you could work with them for a long time? Where they focus on the things that you asked based on the interview, like research questions, policy, things like that. So all of that plays a role in the rank list. That's actually a very stressful process. A lot of people really freak out about that 1 to 2 spot. Yeah.
All right, so just tell everyone what you ranked as number 1.
I ranked Tulane University as my
Okay, didn't you also say that you were currently going there?
Yes, I did mention that.
Okay, so you got your top choice. All right, so now you've applied, you've interviewed, you have ranked. Now it's time for match day.
Yes, finally.
All right, so can you describe kind of all of the excitement and nervousness that was occurring on that day?
I'm getting hot, like thinking about match day. That's how much emotion comes with match day. It's a very nerve-wracking moment because, especially for me, I applied to a combined program, but because there were so few options, I also applied to another specialty, and I didn't know where I was going to end up. When you find out, the way match works is you find out on Monday if you matched, and then you find out on Friday where you matched, and it's like, where did I match? What did I match on? On Monday, it's just a very nerve-wracking moment. You're like, yes, I matched, but give me the details. I need all the details.
Right.
And it's just a very nerve-wracking process. All your friends and family want to know where you're going. Everyone's like, what's your plan for next year? And you're like, I have no clue. My life isn't in my hands.
Right.
That's kind of the emotion. It's an emotional roller coaster ride for match day.
Okay.
But yeah. The way my school does it, I don't know, is we get handed envelopes, and then we get to open them on stage with our family and friends, and it's crazy. So it's very nerve-wracking.
So when you were on stage and you opened up your envelope and it said Tulane University, your first choice,
Yes.
How did you feel?
Well, I couldn't wait to open my envelope, so I opened it before I was on stage because I did not want to cry those tears in front of people. And I did cry when I opened my envelope. I burst into tears. I just felt very accomplished. Like everything I had been working for was finally verified and going to become real and validated. But it's just a very good feeling. Honestly, for me, it felt like I did it, but mostly my support group had done it, and that's why I was so overwhelmed with joy. It was like, we all did it! Oh my god!
Okay, Melina, so now I want to get just a little bit of your advice. What are your tips for another student, medical school student, who wants to get into their top choice program?
Yeah, that's a toughie. I would say the biggest thing for me on interviews is be yourself. Like I said, it's not just us interviewing you, the program interviewing you, but you should be interviewing the program as well. So it's important to balance things is that something you could deal with every day or not? That's very important. I would say try to determine what specialty you want to go into as soon as possible. I wouldn't say before third year because it's hard to determine before third year when you've actually done rotations, but during your third year, just be very aware of, could I picture myself in this specialty? Because as soon as you know that, you know what that specialty requires and what you need to do to get into that specialty. Right. So that's important. Of course, you want to keep an open mind early and keep your options early, so keeping your grades high and your step scores high is ideal, but medical school is hard. So if that doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. It's important to get a good mentor who can kind of keep you realistic. I didn't have a very good mentor until the end of my 3rd year, and once that happened, my life just changed. Everything got much easier. She guided me very perfectly and gave me a confidence in myself that I didn't have previously. So that's important. Some other things of advice: get your personal statement done early, get it read by someone you trust, and don't get it read over and over again by different people. You get conflicting advice, and that's not helpful for you. And try to get your application in early. If you feel like you want to go into medicine and you don't necessarily want to go to college and do biology or go directly through, you don't have to. The world, things are changing. A lot of people are on a less traditional path, so don't feel pressured, but just get someone who can guide you through your process.
Perfect. All right. What advice do you have for those who are currently a medical school student and aren't even sure if they're going to get to this point where they actually are applying for residency programs?
You will. I was there and you will. I was just there. There's a lot of times where it just doesn't feel like it's going to end, and it's just, for me, it was a very difficult process. I'm very thankful for it. I think it made me a stronger person, and it will make you a stronger person as well. But you just have to remember you're working towards a goal, and that goal is achievable. Many people have done it, and you can too.
Well, Melina, I do have one last question.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, I always got to hit you with one last one. And my last question is, knowing what you know now, and I'm so proud to call you my friend who is a doctor. We just got to do that a couple of months ago, and it's been a long time coming.
Yes.
So, Dr. Zuniga,
oh, Lord.
Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to aspiring doctors everywhere?
Okay. I would say it's a long road, but it's worth it. It's very rewarding. I feel happy at the end of every day. I feel like I touch people's lives every day. I cannot stress this enough. Find someone to guide you through the process. I didn't have any doctors in my family, but just finding someone in the community who is willing to take you under their arm is very important. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And one of the big ones, don't be afraid to reach out to random people. Everyone's email is listed now on websites, official websites.
Right.
Find someone who looks friendly, email them and see if you hear anything back. We all want to help people get into medicine. So reach out and we'll definitely help you if we can. It's a big thing that people don't know to do.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Dr. Zuniga, so much for this interview.
Thank you.
We're so excited that you are now practicing medicine. That's a huge, huge accomplishment. If you guys have any questions for Melina or myself, just leave them below and we'll make sure that they get answered. And we thank you all so much for watching, and best of luck on your match day. We'll see you next time.